Okay, I'm going to start out. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that the land upon which we are undertaking our revitalization efforts is part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In addition, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples today. So, firstly, everybody's had a chance to review the agenda. Lori, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Carried. Any conflicts to declare from anyone? Hearing none. Let's move on to consent agenda. We do have a full agenda today. We've already asked for an extension, so I'm gonna try and take some things as read. Let's hit the highlights. We have 4 approvals to go to, 2 new financials. Obviously our audit financial statements and the external audited report, and the integrated annual report, and then we have 3 capital projects that we have to discuss as well, 1 enclosed. So Lori, why don't you, Lisa, why don't you start off, hit the highlights, let's focus on where our risks have changed. I think you've highlighted a couple things in there.
The macro dashboard.
Yeah, in the macro dashboard. Sure. And but take it, most of it is red, and give us the things that have changed or you wish to highlight.
Absolutely. So I mean, you want to just move to the macro dashboard that has the 3 pie charts.
15.
So thank you, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. The macro dashboard on the screen here reports on the overall health of 3 key areas of interest to the Farm Committee. And as you see, there are 3 orange or caution areas this quarter. With respect to the overall corporate plan performance for our fiscal year ending March 31st, 2023 at the top of the page. While we'll talk about this further in the agenda when we get to item 16 on the integrated annual report, I would highlight that we performed significantly better than last year, in that we have achieved at least 70% of our plan target for capital investment plan, for revenues, and our KPIs. Those are the 3 green areas at the top of the pie, versus last year we achieved just 1 of those over 70. And the orange area there on key deliverables, where we met just 54% of plan. And the key deliverables are the time-based project milestones, which this year were impacted more than last year by external imperatives that were beyond our control, things like supply chain challenges and schedule resequencing to accommodate partners. And we provide details on each of these deliverables in Appendix 1 of the draft integrated annual report, if you're interested in looking at that. In terms of the other 2 orange areas on this dashboard, one relates to our largest capital project, the Portland Flood Protection Project. It has actually improved from red last quarter to orange this quarter, as the budget pressures are expected to be fully resolved with additional funding approvals completed or underway. And David Custer, our Chief Project Officer, will talk about that shortly. And then finally, in the middle there, the Finance Administration orange area with respect to enterprise risk management. And that's consistent with last quarter, which was orange as well. We have 3 high residual risks in our corporate-wide risk register. And Charmaine, if you want to just move to the next slide, that shows the risk register. And I can just highlight what those areas are and what changed from last quarter. So first, so our 3 areas that are in red there are the enterprise risk planning, system risk, the financial self-sustainability, and the project delivery for non-plans projects. And so with the first one, with the ERP, we've made some progress on that, but we do have one issue that remains. It doesn't impact our financial statements or our project reporting. It's really relates to increased staff time and workarounds and things of that nature. The second risk related to the second risk, which was there before, which relates to the project delivery of non-Portlands projects. This is consistent with last quarter as well, and it's really the situation where we continue to face and assess the impact of unprecedented levels of escalation from global macroeconomic conditions that from the last 2 years on our upcoming projects. So things like the Eastside Municipal Infrastructure, for example, which we'll report on later in the year or early next year. And then finally, well, we did see a reduction in the Portland's delivery risk from high to medium this quarter, thanks in large part to support from our 3 government partners. Our financial self-sustainability risk has been elevated too high, and this is really because of the reduction in secure funding post 2024 and the volume of unfunded projects and our corporate strategic plan. And we'll talk about that further in the closed session. And my final comment on the risk dashboard is just that our employee recruitment and retention risk was also reduced this quarter, because largely in part to a reduction in voluntary turnover rate from 15% last year to 10% this year. And then in terms of the other dashboards in the section, I'm happy to take audit and liquidity dashboards as read and answer any questions on those or any of those items.
Does the risk on the non-Portlands projects, is there any one project that has tipped us over there? Is it Brown Slip? Is it all of them?
No, it's essentially all of them. All of the projects that have been estimated over the last 24 months or so, as we bring designs up, design forward and start re-estimating, we're finding that the costs are higher than the estimates that we had as part of the due diligence. So that's on.
Many of these are city projects.
Yeah,
right?
there's
So
Quayside infrastructure, Waterfront East LRT. So those, we as we do estimates, continue to do estimates, we see that the costs appear to be still rising.
anything that was estimated a couple of years ago, obviously is out of date. So we're just reviewing all of those. And as I mentioned, a lot of these are city projects we're doing on behalf of the city. So the city's working with us to look at what solutions would be.
David, I don't know if you want to make any comments on the PLFP.
We speak to PLFP a couple of times during the course of the meeting, so I think we can take this as read.
Lisa, can I just ask you on the liquidity cash flow forecast?
Yeah.
At the end of the graph, how much are we in the hole there?
That's about 25 million, and we do note that we come out, noted on here, we do come out of borrowing. Doesn't say on here. Edit on here. Marion, you'll know exactly the date that we come out of borrowing, but I think it's shortly after that.
And we come out because there's more money from Quayside, or?
That's right. Typically that would be the reason.
Is it possible to show this graph extending a bit further?
We do have it in a closed session item over 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't in our package.
It was not in your.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we may get into some of this in directors only.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll save my other questions for the
Sounds great.
Okay.
We have to approve the minutes still. Everybody had a chance to review those. Any comments? Can I get a motion to approve the February 23rd minutes? Seconded. You, Carrie. Dashboard. Can you get into the Portlands now? Or
Oh, I think we go to the audited financial statement.
yeah, let's do that.
We have it.
Got, we have video on standby. I think it. Are they on the call?
She's on.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
That's
Yeah.
that's it. Sorry.
Oh,
essentially.
So I'm going to actually invite my colleague, Shandy, who's our Director of Financial Management, to provide a brief overview of our financial statements for the year ended March 31st. Before I do that, I will say that they're very good results this year for the corporation. And in addition, these financial statements do reflect the closing of phase 1 of the major development agreement in accordance with accounting principles. It's important to note that not all of the revenues associated with the closing have been recognized in these financial statements, because certain future payments are dependent on certain future conditions being met. And we've got some details and explanations about that in the closed session, should you be interested. So over to you, Sampana.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. I'm presenting the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended March 31st, 2023. I'll walk through some of the key items in both the statement of financial position and the statement of financial activities, and then one particular item in the notes to the financial statements. Before I begin, in addition to reflecting the impact of the closing of phase 1 for Quayside this fiscal year, these financial statements also incorporate the impact of the change in accounting policy related to the expensing of costs capitalized under land under development, which the committee approved at their meeting in February 2023. This change in the accounting policy and its impact is explained in detail in note 3 of the statements. With that, let's turn to page 56 of the material, Charmaine, which is the statement of financial, statement for financial position. Just going to go through quickly 3 or 4 items over here. In terms of the cash and short-term investments, we are slightly higher at 119 million compared to same time last year. And this is a result of closing of the Quayside transaction close to the financial statement date. We also have receivables of 81 million. It's important to note that of the 81 million, it's almost about 58 million of it was as a result of Portland's receivables from both Canada and province. Subsequent to the financial statement date, we have realized the outstanding receivables from from Canada. The receivables of 25 million from the province remain outstanding as of today. But as we have learned, there are no concerns, and it's just a matter of a processing issue. The due diligence on all of these have been completed, and we should be able to realize that shortly. In terms of the restricted cash, slightly higher at 62 million compared to 46 million last year due to just increase in construction holdbacks. Just an item to note over here, in addition to the restricted cash of 62 million, we also have about 15.4 million that we have set as a capital reserve. It's included because it's designated cash, it's not really restricted. This capital reserve account was created to cover some high-level program contingencies which may arise in future, and this is included as a part of the cash and short-term investments balance of 119 million. In terms of the assets under development, we have spent a total amount of 311 million this year. Of the 311 million, about 264 million is capitalized in that 1.4 billion number that appears under assets under development, and most of it, almost 234 million, relates to Portland's. And the additional amount of about 20 million is our capital asset acquisition for Parliament Slip, which is under capital asset, and the remaining about 27 million is expensed in the statement of financial activities, which we will go through next after I cover some of the liabilities. We also have term receivables of 41.7 million, and this pertains to the portion that is that relates to the deferred payments on the closing land proceeds closing. We have recognized about 158 million for phase 1 closing in our financial statements, of which 119 million was received as of March 31st, and almost 38 million of the 41 million represents deferred payments, which should be received in December 2024 and March 2027. The last item on the statement of financial position, and it's noteworthy, is the deferred contributions of 135 million, which are down from 200 million last year. And that's only because we are drawing down on the Portland's working capital. We haven't requested any funding from the city this year, and we're using their working capital to fund our Portland's project. So the deferred contributions are down to that extent. If we can just turn to the next page, page 57, the statement of financial activities. We'll just go through some of the revenues over here. Revenues are 192 million, down from 299 million restricted revenues. That is down from 299 million last year, and that's only because of Portland's. As I mentioned, we haven't requested anything from the city this year, so there was a city contribution last year, and we are using city's working capital to draw down for our Portland's expenditures. As I mentioned when I was discussing the financial position, we have about 23.6 million, which is expense, which are a part of the 311 million of expenditures this year. And most of these expense that we've expensed over here relate to Queens Quay West optimization, destination playground, and design review panel, and other related projects. Last item over here is the land sale proceeds, which is a significant item, which is 86 million, which is net of the revenues that we have recognized this year is about 158 million, and this amount represents net of the cost of land and the amounts that we have expensed as land under development in terms of the change in accounting policy or the implementation of the accounting policy. Last item which I would like to go through is on page number 65. This is an important note to look at, which is note number 14B, which is our unrestricted surplus. Now we have changed as a result of the closing of the Quayside transaction, the unrestricted surplus has a deficit that we have been reporting for the past several months has now been changed to a surplus of 65.6 million. I do not have any additional comments on the financial statements, but at this time I'm open to answering any questions that you may have.
I asked about our treasury operations in this environment. We're making 5.6 million interest income this year versus 900. We've got lots of cash sitting around. Who's managing that process and making interest rates now where they are? I see we've got GICs at 5.8 and 5.9. Who's making the call on what's going into GICs, what's staying in the cash account? Who's running treasury operations?
So it's primarily Zapata, myself, and our director of financial planning. And as you've seen with our liquidity forecast, we do a very detailed forecast of liquidity over, short term and long term. So any decisions we've made related to that been based on that analysis in terms of when we expect to need the cash, so that we are not in a situation where we would have to break a GIC. And we have, as you've seen in the statements, we have two GICs for that purpose with different maturity dates and different interest rates. But it's really to try and maximize the interest while we do have some excess cash, because as you know, based on the forecast, we will be in the opposite situation, and in 2 years we will need to draw down on our line of credit. So
But just they're pretty large amounts of money now, given the happened.
Yeah, that absolutely. Yeah.
So you're comfortable it's running appropriately?
I definitely am. Yeah, I have strong honesty with that area.
That money's just going to general revenue. It's not being allocated to anything in particular.
At the moment, so about 2.5 million of interest income we've got allocated to project priorities, and then any excess above that, which we made about another 2.5 million this year, we've identified as putting into capital reserve where we can. So our capital reserve balance, as Zapata mentioned, is actually higher than what we planned it to be by $1 million, $1.5 million.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and it will grow further. So we're and I think it was a recommendation that you had mentioned in another meeting, Jeannie, where we're trying to put any excess interest into that capital reserve.
Okay.
Well, it's also to address the projected increased costs of some of the public infrastructure that we're going to have to deal with in the future too. So.
Okay. Thanks, Zapata. Other questions on the financial statements, anyone? No, we have to approve, but I'd prefer to hear from our auditors at BDO first to get their report. And
so we have Rob Claus and Jeff Barrett, who are both partners at BDO Canada. So I would invite Rob and Jeff to provide their report to the committee on our financial statements and their year-end audit of those.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, and good morning, everybody. Do you want to flip to that report? Yeah, maybe start with page 4 of this report, please. So page 4 here is sort of the audit at a glance. So starting out, our preliminary materiality was 4.5 million, which we had discussed back in February. We could have gone up past 5 million, but we kept it consistent just from past years' discussions and thoughts around materiality. So that was the number we kept it at. The one thing we do need to note as auditors is nothing had come to our attention during our audit for suspected fraud or alleged fraud or anything of that nature. If something did come up, you would have heard from us well in advance of this meeting, but it is a required communication that I have to state here. And our audit timeframe is generally around the end of April to the beginning of May. Next slide, please. So in terms of the status of the audit, so the first two items have all been cleared out. So you can disregard those items just due to the timing of when we upload the final report. So we're essentially at the stage that we, as far along as we can be at this stage. So for the last three items, just the receipt of the signed rep letter when the approval occurs in June, in mid-June. We'll do a subsequent events review up to that date, up to the financial statement approval date, and then obviously the ultimate approval of the financials by the board. On the next slide, please. So the next area here is just discussing our audit findings and certain areas of risk that we find or we assess, during our planning stage, and we audit to a little bit of a higher degree than other areas. So the first two items are items that you would have seen in past years. These are standard items on any audit, regardless of industry or type of entity. So management override of controls, and then revenue recognition and the second risk there. So essentially, for the management override of controls, management just is sometimes in a unique position to override certain controls. So we do certain audit procedures. We review journal entries for certain criteria. We have discussions with management. We will audit. We'll pick something to audit that's sort of considered, we call it unpredictability testing, and that sort of changes things up every year just to keep, I guess, management on their toes and check out different areas every year. So from that testing that we performed, there was no issues found. In terms of our revenue recognition, so obviously it's the heart of every organization for the most part. So we do a lot of testing in the revenue area here, and there was no issues from our testing. The next area is accrued liabilities. So just given the nature of Waterfront Toronto and all the projects occurring and things as they progress through the project stages, we test accrued liabilities to a higher degree, more focusing on the completeness of liabilities, making sure that everything is recorded that should be recorded. We do a lot of confirmations with vendors, and from the testing that we did, there was no issues. Next slide, please. Assets under development. So obviously it is the largest item on the balance sheet on the asset side. And we do a lot of testing here as well. We do a lot of test controls for the process that management goes through as they record all the journal entries. From the testing we completed here, there was no issues. Construction deposits. This one here is maybe less of a risk than it was in past years, just given the value that it is sitting at today. But we've kept it here just because, you never know when the deposits can increase or decrease year over year. So from the testing we performed, the deposits recorded appear accurate and exist. Contribution agreements or delivery agreements or any agreements that affect the financials, we would review the register that's kept by management. Any additional projects, we would review the new agreements. And this is just to make sure, obviously, that we're understanding what's going on with the organization. So from the review of the agreements and the testing that we performed, no issues came about. Deferral of contribution and grants. So obviously, this is sort of tied into the revenue recognition policy. We want to make sure that things that you've received money for that you haven't spent yet is still recorded as deferred contributions. We do a lot of tests and controls around that as well on the revenue side and the how things are recorded on the cost side. So no issues were found from testing there. And then climate disclosures, again, still not a required disclosure from an accounting handbook perspective, but Waterfront Toronto has taken the initiative to be conservative and has a note on the climate disclosures. So from what we've read in the financial statements, there was no issues on that disclosure as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of internal controls, so when we go through our audit process, we review the internal controls as they relate to the financial statements and financial reporting systems. If there was a significant control deficiency, we would be required to state it here, but nothing came about from our review and walkthrough of controls. Next slide, please. Unadjusted differences. So there's one item that is a reversing item from last year for 267,000, but this year there was no unadjusted differences, and there was one adjusted difference that we put through for contaminated sites. But aside from that, everything was clean and everything was good from a auditing perspective. And then next slide, please. And so other required communications here. So this area here, if there was, disagreements with management, if we found anything where you're, not following certain laws or regulations, or any other sort of important matters, this would be the area that we would disclose it here to the farm committee. There was no such matters to disclose, so there's no items here to discuss or note. And then the next area is on the next slide, which I won't go through in detail, but it's just the draft auditor's report and then the representation letter in the appendices here. So that's the letter in the final report. I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Good job,
Questions?
Lisa.
Yeah, it's such a clean report that you didn't leave us any room for questions at all, so.
That's what we try to do.
So thanks, Rob and Jeff, for your work on this and the clean audit. And congratulations, Lisa, to you and your team on a very easy report for us farm committee members to digest. Okay.
Right, thank you, guys.
Should we take the motion now to approve the financial statements?
You're recommending approval, but
To the board, yeah. Can I get that motion? Lori's making that motion, seconded. All in favor? That's carried. Recommend that at the next board meeting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Veronica at MNP for the internal audit. Good morning, Veronica.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see everybody. I have, looks like you have a full house, and apologies that I couldn't be there in person today. I'm just waiting for one of my fellow partners to join, Wendy. I think she's just going to be logging in. Just let me know when she's able to attend, be let in. But as we're okay, I just messaged her to join. I know you guys are a little bit ahead schedule, but it's great. Okay. As we're waiting for her to come in, what I can do is, so we have three items that we wanted to present to you. The first is the internal audit, the 4-year plan status update. So I can go through that while we're waiting for Wendy. So if you go to I think the first the package, great, yeah. So this shows the 4-year audit plan and the status of completion. So as you know, a few years ago, we completed performance measurement, resource succession planning, and the ERP lessons learned. So the audit that we'll be presenting today is the ERP procurement process review. It really was a focus at looking at continuous improvement and improvement opportunities for ERP, specifically in the procurement process. So we will go through those strengths and opportunities that we identified on that for the next one. And then as you go to the next slide, you'll see the upcoming audits that we have. So we're going to be starting cybersecurity audit. So that in your package as well is the draft planning memo. So that's underway, and we're going to be starting interviews in the next 2 weeks or so. And upcoming on the plan is accessibility and further look at robotic process automation opportunities within the ERP. So we did have that one originally planned to do before cybersecurity, however, wanted to give a little bit of a break to the folks in the ERP, those areas in finance and accounting and PMO, just because we've done 2 back-to-back audits looking at the ERP. So wanted to, and cybersecurity is a higher risk area. So wanted to come back to that. I will pause there if there's any specific questions on the status update.
Not so far?
Nope. Okay. No, is Wendy able to?
She hasn't signed in yet.
Oh, okay, let me just message again.
I think that's right, isn't it, Charmaine? I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
No, that's correct, Ian. She hasn't.
Thank you.
It'd be easier if we came back to you, Veronica, or do you want to?
No, I can also go to, I just messaged her again on my side as well. We did provide as information the cybersecurity planet audit planning memo. If you want to flip to there, we can go through that item quickly. You can see the audit scope and objectives for that. It's going to be assessing Waterfront's cybersecurity controls and all the greatest risks of the organization with regards to cybersecurity. We are planning to conduct this audit over the summer and present results at the farm in September. We are going to, the cyber team is going to be using the CIS controls framework version 8, which is the most recent version, and we've worked with Lisa and Chris Shires to just go through the scope and highlight areas that we'll focus on. I don't know if there's any questions specifically on this. I can take those.
Veronica,
Yeah.
Jeannie here. In the cybersecurity audit, I was noting your out of scope items. And I know we have a third party that does kind of, you know, testing and try to hack us. Why is it you're not involved in reviewing any of that stuff?
So we do the audit team will look at the results of the penetration testing. We just won't be doing our own penetration testing or phishing.
Oh,
Just-
okay, okay. Well, I didn't know that the reviewing the controls were out of scope. Okay, all right.
No,
but
no.
you
It's
do-
just physically, the team actually doing the penetration testing will not be in the scope because you've already had the third party do that. We didn't want to duplicate that
Of
work.
course, yeah.
So their results will be reviewed.
And I wanted to ask a question back on the ERP. You made some kind of you noted 4 areas of opportunity to further streamline the process. And
Yeah,
I
so
noticed
like-
we've had we've
Sorry,
had
sorry.
issues in the past.
That's
Oh, that way we're waiting for. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'd like Wendy to join us.
Okay,
She's the
sure.
partner who
That's okay.
helped. We're just ahead of schedule, so I've
Okay.
been messaging her. I don't know if she's having trouble with.
Maybe we should just come
Maybe
back.
we come back.
Do you want to come back? I'll
Yeah.
message. I'll keep and then apologies for that.
No, we'll come back to you. Let's
Okay.
go into the project related approvals. We've got 2 here. One's a sort of a codification of what we've been talking about for months now. And technically, we're approving this for recommendation to the board, aren't we?
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. So,
So this is the formalization. So David, over to you.
thank you, Kevin. So our requirement is that projects require capital approval initially if over $5 million and subsequently if the project cost increases by greater than 10% or more than $5 million. So both of those apply in the case of the Portland's flood protection project. So this is really just to formalize the board's approval of the additional costs and time associated with the project. So I'll very quickly go through this, starting with the background. On page, I think it's 119, Charmaine. No, just to remind everyone, project, it is part of our rolling 5-year plan. And the deliverables include 240 hectares of flood protection, the naturalized mouth of the river, the 4 new iconic bridges, a rebuilt, realigned Cherry Street, and rebuilt Commissioner Streets and Dawn Roadway, complete with cycling and pedestrian infrastructure, reconstruct Lakeshore Bridge over the Dawn River, and then build and complete the 3 new parks, River Parks North, South, and Promontory Park South. So we've got a couple of slides that show status to date. So if we can just move forward. First slide is the Cherry South Bridge, which was opened in October of last year. The next slide shows the Canoe Cove Islands under construction. Those are now complete, actually. And then finally, a shot of the ice management area looking south under the Commissioner Street Bridge along the alignment of the new river. Moving on, Charmaine. Overall schedule, we are forecasting to be complete, substantially complete at the end of 2024. There'll be a number of items that will be deferred into the spring of 2025, mostly seasonally related work, plantings, and some asphalt paving that can't be done over the winter months. Next slide. Where we are to date, we have awarded 95% of the all of the work, both hard and soft construction and consulting costs, and progress to date is 72%. So the supplementary capital approval we're looking for, it's required for all the reasons that we've talked about over the past 6 months or so. I don't think we need to get into what all that reflects. Where we are today, on the next slide, Charmaine, is forecasting anticipated total project cost of 1.354 million, or $1.3 billion. That's an increase of 169 million over the original budget of 1.185, and that includes a contingency of additional contingency of $61 million. We are currently in progress with governments to obtain the approvals and agreements necessary to implement that. And where we are to date actually is that the city has approved the additional funding at their last city council meeting, and the province has also approved its additional funding through Treasury Board. We are now awaiting on the Minister of Infrastructure to approve the funding required for the federal government, which we anticipate. No, just the process that they have to go through, fairly straightforward. They just need to get it done. So we have actually executed now the contribution agreement, which provides for about 87 million of that funding, and we are working on negotiating the other two agreements that provide the balance of funding for the parks, completion of the parks, which is essentially what the federal government funding is being provided for.
Let us know if the federal members, if there's anything we can do. We're meeting with the new ADM in a week or so.
Yeah, they're.
So you'll let us know if we need to.
Yeah, we will. They're.
Can prod a little.
We are meeting with them weekly, so things,
We're happy to help.
forward. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, hoping that,
Don't hesitate to ask.
yeah, I'm hoping that we have confirmation before the board meetings. Yeah, I think it's first week of June, so.
Yeah, we're meeting on the Monday. So. Okay.
Okay, all right. So let's move forward to, I think we can go right to the recommendation on page 130, Charmaine.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
Dynamic world moving fast. Are you still comfortable that we're
Yeah.
at 94 and that we're December 2024?
Yes, we are. So we'll talk about you got another presentation in a minute or two that talks about that, but yes, we're comfortable right
I
now.
wanted to ask, because we're actually 95% awarded based on the original budget of 1185, but we're 83% awarded based on the new budget of 1354. You'll talk about that a bit later?
Yeah.
Okay. But that doesn't matter for the motion we need to approve, right?
So here's the motion that the board or the farm committee recommend to the board the approval of the $169 million supplementary capital, and that the substantial completion date be extended to December 2024. As noted, the 169 million comprised of 48.6 million from the federal government, 55.2 million from the province, another 55.2 from the city, and 10 million from Waterfront Toronto, which the board approved at its last meeting.
Okay, any further questions there? If not, I'll ask someone to make the motion. Jeannie,
Move it.
Cory, all in favor?
Yep. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go get the money.
Oh, end of a long road, or hopefully the end.
Yes.
No more money.
My kids.
Hasn't worked yet.
Is it in there that, just out of curiosity, that we're handing over the parks, who do we hand them over to?
They get handed over to the city. Just about everything we're doing gets handed over.
Everything that's gonna be
Almost
city
all the
run.
assets.
Okay,
And I would just point out for the committee's information and for the record that we were part of the open doors over the weekend. So we opened up our viewing platform to the public
That was on Saturday.
on Saturday from like 10 to 5. And we had quite a number of staff, CAM staff were there, Mira and Michaela. We had to call Carol in because we had 800 people through over the course of the day. So fairly long lineups and people patiently waiting to get a view of the project. So it's
Good.
very well.
I'll just add to that. I know Christina and Ed and others took some of the municipalities that were in town for a tour as well.
Okay.
We got phenomenal, and I went Saturday night to meet with a group of them, and they're just astounded by the work that we're doing. In fact, I don't know, Christine, if you want to say, like Vancouver said, this is just one of the most
Councillors from Vancouver were so impressed by the work that's been done with how holistic the thinking has been around the waterfront. And in particular, they were extremely impressed with how we've been able to make sure it's not privatized right to the water's edge. So we had expected Vancouver to be a little bit protective, I think, of their own reputation, but they were extraordinarily generous with regards to where they thought we were at. Same with the folks that were there from Halifax on Saturday. They were also extraordinarily impressed with what has been done so far. A lot of folks had mentioned too, they had been here about 5 years ago and the change and how fast the change has happened is just breathtaking.
and what's the purpose of the Vancouver and Halifax people being here?
It was the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference.
Okay,
There were like 1,500 people in town.
Yeah, they were.
At least, yeah. And we actually had an overflow on our first day of our tour. It was supposed to just be a bus tour through East Bayfront and the Portlands. We ended up taking and splintering off and offering a supplementary walking tour to about 20 of them as well. But they were oversubscribed.
I think between the open doors and that experience, people are starting to recognize what's happening down on the waterfront now as bridges and other things are opening up, and the platform is an excellent vehicle to actually oversee what's happening. So I think that's something we're going to continue to work with Cameron and his group to get more public attention out there.
Kevin's great. Veronica's partner Wendy's on the line now, so I don't know if you wanted to toggle back.
put Pina on hold for another second, and I think you're next, aren't you? Okay, Veronica and Wendy, back over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Apologize for that, but Wendy is here. I think her computer needed to do a reboot, of course, just when we want to present. But yeah, as mentioned, this was the latest review that we completed. It was focused on the ERP system and procurement process specifically. So I don't know if you remember Wendy, she helped do the lessons learned engagement. So I had her help out with this one as well. And I'll throw it over to Wendy. She's just wanted to walk us through the strengths that we identified, as well as those improvement opportunities.
Great, thank you, Veronica. And again, my apologies. My computer required me to suddenly reset my password and everything went dark for 7 minutes. So as Veronica mentioned, we will cover off the key strengths and then the opportunities. So we put these into the buckets of people, process, and technology. And in summary, there were a lot of strengths around the people aspect of the procurement process. Lots of positive comments, strong understanding from staff members across the organization as far as what was expected of them, how they were to follow the delegation of authority, what was included within the manuals, the processes, etc. One specific aspect that was very positive was that there is strong training, and when new employees start, they are able to access a D365 guide that helps them go through the steps within the procurement process. In the process piece itself, there is again a strong policy, and that delegation of authority is well written, it's well understood. Waterfront Toronto is following the workflows and the thresholds as they're set out in the policies and the procedures. Everything is complete and accessible. And of specific note is that the average number of what could sometimes be called close date or number of calendar days to approve the various types of procurement documents is within that reasonable standard for a public sector organization. On the technology piece, there is a new vendor supporting the D365 tool, making those changes and modifications to the tool as we move forward with it. We move into the opportunities. There is, yeah, one more slide down. Awesome. So we had a few opportunities, and I won't go through all of the details, but essentially the first one focuses on reducing manual and duplicate activities. And there are some instances where an individual get an email to do something after they have already, for example, put their signature on a DocuSign document. So there are some things like that, that there's efficiencies that can be gained by making some changes within the system. We did talk to the new vendor about potentially making these changes, and while they weren't completely familiar with the details of the review that we did, they did believe that they were able to make those changes in Waterfront Toronto's D365 instance. The second opportunity is around that risk-based approach for approvals. So right now, all of the approvals within D365 follow the procurement practices and the policy. And sometimes what that means is that change orders and small dollar amounts, etc., have to go through a C-level executive and or CEO approval. So there's the opportunity to identify that low dollar value threshold, which can be up to $25,000 for procurements that are funded already. What this does is it demonstrates trust and transparency to the organizations, specifically to individuals who have the ability to approve those funded transactions, and it will significantly reduce the volume of transactions that go through various levels of approval. Finally, on the next slide, we have two more quick opportunities. One thing that we did here throughout the course of our review was the need for additional project reporting, specifically to look at how is the project doing, provide information to both the project sponsor and the corporate level as required. And those are changes that can be made within the tool itself to configure and make sure that the right information is provided to the organization to make those decisions. Finally, the fourth opportunity is around training, and that focuses on just greater awareness of what's out there for manuals and guides, and potentially even schedule some additional training sessions. And then around the communication of the changes that are made to the solution, just ensuring that they're made in a manner that is most relevant to the various individuals and is done in a timely fashion. So that summarizes our strengths and opportunities from the work that we did. And I'm open to any questions if there are any.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much. I have a question. I noticed that, I know throughout our ERP journey, we've had to change vendors and stuff because they didn't deliver. So I see we have a new vendor. What is our risk exposure, relying so much on a third party, and does it make sense to increase our internal capacity? Not to do the job completely, but having somebody super informed internally on the IT side so that, I'm just wondering, do you see that as a vulnerability where there is an opportunity for us to staff up internally so that we have a bit more expertise?
Yeah, just going back historically, yeah, we're doing both.
We are doing both. We do have internal capabilities that we're building and developing. Certainly as we continue to build more enterprise-based systems into the organization, we're just implementing a customer relation management system as well. So we do have at least one individual dedicated to ERP right now, and likely need to bolster that as well.
So I know as an organization, we've tended to lag on the IT side and
so Jane,
staffing up to support that.
The one thing I would say, you might not remember, but we did have somebody leading this a number of years ago. We had to make an adjustment there as well internally, as well as externally. We're now rebuilding that again, to your point.
But it is definitely a priority to build internal capabilities.
And is this something, Wendy, your team would recommend? Like it is an exposure and a risk?
Anytime that an organization relies exclusively on a vendor for any type of technology, it is a risk. There is a balance between internal capacity and external, and we always recommend that a client considers having both resources, internally and externally, to augment their team.
What's the timing on getting this resource in place?
Well, we already have one resource,
Okay.
but I'm just saying as we're continuing to kind of build on our enterprise systems, we'll likely need another resource. We have another resource right now who's helping us with our enterprise content management system, which is related to optimization of SharePoint. And that's a contract role right now, but that's likely to turn into a permanent position in the future. So, okay, brilliant.
And the only other thing I would say is shortly, as we advance our mandate extension, I'll be coming back to HRGSR and then to the board, talking about what we need for the future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions there? Anything else from Veronica or Wendy? Okay, well, thanks for that
No, thank
report.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the capital approvals. Over to you, Pina.
Thank you. Chairman, can we go to the first slide? Thank you. Today, I'm going to provide the Farm Committee with a brief overview of the Queens Quay East Extension Lakeville, which is a really long name, so I might just call it Lakeville for short as we go through. Project, which is actually one piece of the larger Quayside Infrastructure and Public Realm project. I'm also going to provide an update on where we're at on that larger project. We're asking the farm for approval for a recommendation to the Board of Directors for capital approval for the Queens Quay Lakeville project, about $33.4 million, and for the farm to confirm the approach to construction contracting for both the Quayside Public Realm project and the Keating Channel pedestrian bridge. We can go to the next slide. Just a little bit of background for the Farm Committee. In June of 2021, the Board of Directors approved the 60% design and pre-construction services associated with the Infrastructure and Public Realm project for Quayside, including the Lakeville project. The Lakeville project is an early works for the Quayside project, and as such is being advanced ahead of the rest of the public realm for and infrastructure for Quayside. We commenced design in early 2022 for both of those projects. We have completed the 30% design for the public realm and are at the 60% design milestone for the Lakeville project. Funding for the design and construction of the Quayside project is a combination of City of Toronto funding and land sale revenues for Quayside, and that was approved by Council. A delivery agreement for the Quayside Infrastructure and Public Realm project is currently being negotiated with the City of Toronto to get those funds over to Waterfront Toronto, and is expected to be completed before the start of construction for the Lakeville. And the project is in our board approved rolling 5-year strategic plan. We can go to the next slide. Just from a geography perspective, the Lakeville project is number 1 on the map that's on screen. The remaining components make up the larger Quayside Infrastructure and Public Realm project. We are doing this in an integrated way. So we are advancing design on all but the Silo Park piece, which we will commence probably within the next 6 months to a year, the design process for that. We go to the next slide. Just want to describe the Lakeville project. The Lakeville project includes dredging of the sediment that's currently in the north end of the Parliament slip. It's about 3 to 3.5 meters of sediment that needs to be dredged so that we can get to bedrock. We also need to treat all that dredge as it's removed from the lake and export whatever components of it need to be exported. We're building a 61-meter dock wall, which you can see as the purple item on the map on the drawing. It's a king pile system with steep tie rods, and that's on purpose to avoid any tie rods within the public right of way of Queens Quay, because Queens Quay gets extended through here as part of the Quayside project. We have, and following that, there is also a lake fill component. The lake fill is all imported quarried material. That's the area shown in the brown on the drawing, and rock revetment, which you see in green on the drawing, which is required for two reasons. Both it adds additional structural support to the dock wall, but it also acts as the fish habitat compensation for the project. Go to the next slide. You can see all these components in plan view. The lake fill at the north end of the slip, the triangle, the new dock walls, the purple line on the slide, 61 meters long, and the rock revetment is the green area in the slip. We go to the next slide. Very quickly, we're at the 60% design milestone, and we reached that in April. We will complete 90% tender-ready drawings in July and expect to start construction in September. It's quite a lengthy process when you include, in addition to all of that construction, we have to wait for consolidation of the fill to allow for us to then commence the building of the infrastructure and public realm on top of it. So January 2025 completion date. Go to the next slide. We have several approvals required for the project, mostly due to the impacts on the lake. This includes permits from Transport Canada related to navigation, Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada related to impacts to habitat that may exist in the slip on the north end, Ports Toronto related to authorization to do construction in the harbor, TRCA, and all of these approvals are well underway. We continue to meet with Aquatic Habitat Toronto, who helps us facilitate a big chunk of these approvals, as many of these groups sit on that committee. Next slide. So as David mentioned, capital approval is required for projects that exceed $5 million. So we're here for capital approval today for the construction components of the Lakefill project. And we're here as we have reached the 60% design milestone. We're looking for capital approval for $34.4 million, which I will describe in detail on the next slide.
And just like to ask this question before, but this wasn't necessitated by our purchase of the Parliament slip. This was a project that we were always going to have to undertake.
Correct.
It was required to extend Queens Quay, is it?
Correct. It's required to extend Queens Quay and to realign Parliament Street, which ends up creating block 3 and 4 and 5 ultimately for the Quayside project. And the purchase of the slip help was not only for the Parliament slip activation project, but was required also for this project.
It's actually why we purchased the slip, was to get this done. And then since we had to purchase the entire slip, we were trying to be creative to say, okay, so if we have to purchase the entire slip, how can we bring value add to the entire area? So Parliament slip ended up as a supplement to this.
As I said, we're seeking capital approval for $34.4 million. That includes $21 million of hard costs, $6 million in soft costs, less the $2.3 million that was previously approved in June of 2021, and $9.2 million in contingency as well as tax. And I'll walk through the contingency in more detail in just a few slides and how that was calculated. As I said, it's proposed to be funded by the City of Toronto and is subject to the delivery agreement being completed. Next slide. So a complete risk assessment has been undertaken for the Lakefill project based on some of the initial lessons learned from PLFP. We have made some interim process improvements to the risk assessment quantification process, and these improvements have been applied to the Lakefill project as well as the Quayside project as we undertake a 30% design cost estimate review. David, do you want to jump in?
I do. So the board asked at the last meeting that we look at the processes that we followed, given what happened with PLFP, what can we do to improve and take into account some of those issues. So we have actually done very quick, well, not quick, but an interim assessment of some of the things that we can do to, we think, bolster our process and make the results potentially more germane and applicable. Those included, and we've already done some of these in the past, rather than looking for board approval, capital approval at concept design, we were waiting till we get to 60% design. So we've got a much better idea of what the construction costs should be. Excuse me, we've had the estimates completed by 2 independent groups, and then we've got a third independent cost consultant who is looking to consolidate those estimates, and we arrive at a consensus estimate between the 3 estimating companies. One of them is the contractor, so that provides us some, again, additional benefit in that the costs are being extremely well vetted. We have, in doing the risk assessment, I'd say tilted to the side of conservancy in the Monte Carlo assessment and in the risks that we're identifying. So putting a little more or adding a little more risk to the potential for unbudgeted costs and unknown risks. And then finally, we're applying the market escalation risk at a bit of a higher frequency and amount than we have in the past. So those are some of the first things we're doing because we're still trying to do capital approvals. We will come back to the board and farm committee with a full report on that update and the additional things that we can do to improve our procedures and processes probably in the fall.
And David, that also included an assessment, and Gina, you've referenced this before, when we put in our estimates at, for example, $2017, and we have to escalate that appropriately as well. So,
but how many construction companies are qualified to do this type of work?
Oh, that's one of the risks is there aren't that many construction companies, so they have the ability to price the work higher than the market would normally bear, or in fact, we may end up with so few bids that we're tied to a bidder that we may not actually have the most economical price from them. But so that's one of the risks, and our contractors in the market looking to drum up those sub trades and get them interested in the project, but there just aren't that many that do this work.
So will we get an updated estimate after the sub trade tenders, or you think we've got it covered?
Well, we've got what's our contingency here? 40.
Getting to 33%.
33%. So we've got a pretty hefty contingency to try to account for that. We obviously will come back and be reporting on this as we move forward. And once we've got those subtrade bids, we'll have a much better idea where we see.
Who's the contractor that participated in the cost estimates with us?
It's our construction manager, Eastern Construction.
So I think that's what you're going to see with a number of these major projects now is contingencies are going to get moved up because the market's so uncertain. BDO's said that to us before. They can't even from week to week tell us exactly how much we're going to require, right? So I think contingencies are going to be critical to us to make sure we have that.
Just so I'm clear, where's the city at on all this? Where are they on side with these estimates? They
don't generally look at the estimates. They've committed a specific amount of money so far. We are going to go back to them on Quayside and review the overall estimate for the projects with them. And yeah, they'll look at the estimates and the risks. And for this particular project, we haven't really even had to engage the city in that discussion yet, but we have engaged them in the overall Quayside estimating issue.
Okay, when we talk to them all the time, Pina, on parks, parks are seeing the same thing, 30 to 40% escalation in costs. So the city's hand in hand with us trying to figure out how to manage through this.
So is the city funding this whole thing, this 36.7 million? Or we're hoping they will?
It is part of the funding for the Quayside Infrastructure and Public Realm project, part of their bucket of funding.
Okay.
But it's the funding is a combination of Waterfront Toronto land sale revenues and city funding. But they're funding this front end piece. At least
are we going to them for more money or?
We will be eventually because the cost escalation in public realm. So we're in the discussions with the city now and looking at what possible engineering solutions there would be to try to minimize the ask, but they're well aware.
So right now,
Just like-
36.7, we've got that covered. Like we know where those funds are.
Yeah, we have
coming from.
funds, we kind of get to it.
But we're cash flowing it until the city. hopefully comes in.
Well, we're actually working on the delivery agreement with the city now.
Okay.
They,
So,
for them to fund.
Is there any risk in terms of the mayoral election, like anything to delay it or?
Well, I
this
think the
is-
big risk is gonna be the city is gonna have to figure out how they're gonna manage within their budget, right?
Well, yeah, they have
And-
$1 billion
and- Yeah,
budget.
so that, you know.
So they've made all these promises, but they don't have the money.
so this,
So-
so this money is committed
Yeah.
by the city, so it's part of their budget.
Okay, good.
What we're doing with respect to Quayside is much the same as we did in the Portlands. We're looking at all the cost optimization, cost value engineering that we can come up with. We're looking at the potential to defer work. We're looking at the potential for additional funding. If we defer work, there's potential for additional revenues from Quayside due to the increases in densities. So we're looking at all of those options and we'll be reporting back on that when we come back to get the capital approval for Quayside.
But we wanted to give early warning to farm that there are going to be pressures on the Quayside public realm. We're working with the city on it right away. And as David did, even on the flood protection, we're trying to value engineer to minimize the ask. So those conversations are occurring.
See, Lori's got her hand up.
And Meg. Want to go to Meg first?
I think Meg was before me.
Yeah.
Very quickly, yes, we've started those discussions with the city secretariat. We took a deep dive with them last week, and they will be looking to help us solve any issues that come up in terms of the budget. And it will get solved through the annual budgeting process, not probably all at once. And the delivery agreement David mentioned will have language in it that allows for that flexibility.
Lori?
So most of my question, I think, was answered. So what we are approving now is an estimate, and then that'll come forward with a detailed budget of all the funding sources and the city's commitments later on. Like, I'm just curious what I guess I wanted a clearer explanation of what we're committing to now in this report and versus the uncertainty around project scope and the funding sources with the city. And then I have a second question after that.
Sure.
So what we're approving today is capital approval for the first piece of the Quayside Infrastructure Public Realm project, which is the Queens Quay East Extension Lakeville project. The $33.4 million as the budget for that to complete that project. And that's based on, that budget is based on the work, the 60% design and a full cost estimating and risk quantification process that you just, that we have to kind of walk through here.
So maybe I can clarify, Lori. So there is money that was agreed to from land sale revenue, both by the city with development charges and from us to cover off part of the public realm. We have funding for this part. The part that we're coming back on is as we review the entire public realm. We'll be coming back with, this is the pressure we're going to likely see to complete the public realm after value engineering. And we'll be negotiating with the city around additional funds to secure that remaining. So there is money put aside for this.
Correct.
But we are going to come back on the bigger public realm.
And on this money that's been put aside, this is not taking from monies that were supposed to be allocated to things later, or is it advancing all of the money we have now for this project? And then if that's the case, if there isn't resources to proceed, if the gaps that you're identifying for the future, what happens? Does it just sit? What is the state of affairs?
So the city's commitment right now is 142 million. So we're not anywhere near using that up. We've also got money set aside. We've got 250 million set aside overall for the quayside infrastructure. So when we come back, we will have a series of recommendations on how to bridge whatever gap there is after we've done our cost optimizations and or deferral plan. So we will have a plan for how to get it all done and how to get it funded and how long that will take us to get done. That will happen over the course of the next 6 months or so, 6 to 9 months. And in the meantime, this project we need to proceed with the full project, $33 million project, in order to ensure that we don't delay any of the components that come after.
So this component, as David said, is critical because, as we noted and as Lisa noted on some of the future revenue conditions, those are contingent on us meeting certain schedules, and this is one of the primary ones. This was also approved by council years ago and reaffirmed recently. So everybody knows this is one of the early projects that has to be completed.
Charmaine, can you go back to the slide that shows with that red triangle? Page.
And sorry, I
138.
just had one more question. Which was, and you guys know I'm an East Ender, so I've been feeling it anyways, but there was a big article in the Star this weekend about all the constructions works happening along Lakeshore and on the east end of Toronto, and the coordination of those things, the gas line and whatever. You guys hear those complaints all the time. I think Queen's Quay right now is a pressure valve that's absorbing some of that work. Is this going to now shut down another street? And how are we managing traffic operations?
This project will not shut down any part of Queen's Quay.
Okay.
However, the Quayside project will shut down parts of Queen's Quay. And we are negotiating with and coordinating with the city right now, and including with their traffic management teams, to figure out how to get this done, because we do need to close down parts of Queen's Quay in order to construct the new Queen's Quay for Quayside. The city also needs to tear down the Gardner Expressway and rebuild Lakeshore Boulevard, and they're looking at Queen's Quay being a relief for that. So we do have some issues that we have to try to resolve with the city in terms of when this work is going to happen, how it's going to happen, and how we're going to manage it. We have not solved those problems or those issues as yet.
I think it'd be fair to say, David, that there will continue to be traffic pressures in that area.
I think it's fair to say until 2030, till the Gardner is done, there will continue to be traffic issues.
But the red triangles all built from the 333 Lakeshore site, which is the site to the east of the triangle.
Can I just add to what Lori's saying? So basically what we're approving today is to do that little red triangle, the number one is 36.7 million. That's based on 60% design.
Yes.
But with a 90% confidence that that should be the budget. And we're running, so basically total hard and soft is 29.3 million with a 9.2 million contingency, which is about 33%. So you're feeling that even though when we get to kind of 90% cost and you come back to us, that we shouldn't see any big surprises.
No, and that's why we're putting the contingency there right now.
Okay,
right?
okay. And are we going to have a third party review the costs?
We already have
You
had
have had, okay.
multiple
Okay.
third parties
Okay,
review
great.
us.
Yes.
Okay.
Should sorry, jump ahead to some conclusions here, although
Yeah, let's get to
Jeannie
some
did a great job
conclusions, yep.
at summarizing it.
Beating a dead horse here.
Yeah, so we'll skip through these slides and assume that Farm has read.
Yeah,
these
good.
and
Go to the
consider what
motion.
we just discussed. Oh, wait, before we go to the motion, I think we need to talk about contractor procurement just for a minute. If you go back one slide, Charmaine, in 2021, when we got our board approval for the 60% design, we also got board approval to secure pre-construction services. And in 2022, we selected Eastern Construction as our pre-construction services contractor, or our CM actually. As we did that as a competitive procurement process, and we're now recommending that we proceed with Eastern Construction pursuant to their proposal for both construction services and post-construction services for the full Quayside Public Realm project. We go to the next slide.
We're
Is that
also,
what you procured for, like the full
We
quayside?
we
project?
procured the full.
Yeah. we just awarded pre-construction. We're also recommending, given the proximity of the pedestrian bridge that we talked about at the last board meeting, and the overlap of the construction of the pedestrian bridge, both in space and time with the Quayside Public Realm project, in order to avoid Ministry of Labor constructor issues, we're recommending that the Keating Channel pedestrian bridge be added to the scope of the construction manager for the Quayside Infrastructure Public Realm project. And as you can see, that pink arrow completely overlaps on the north end with the Quayside Infrastructure Public
we already
Realm
do that?
project.
Did we already?
Yeah,
approve
we
that?
approved the
You
bridge.
approved
The bridge.
This is how we're gonna get it done.
This is
Oh,
the.
we get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's important because of timing. We have a requirement to get this done by a certain. date.
2026.
And we could tender it separately, but then we'd be,
Lose time.
Tripping over each other.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
having trouble getting the coordination.
We're
logistics
assuming
stuff.
that even though building a bridge wasn't in the original procurement RFP, that they have the expertise to
Oh,
do it
they clearly have this.
and experience.
Yes.
Okay.
And so if we go to the next slide, this is the recommendation. Summarizes everything we just talked about. So we're recommending that the farm committee recommend to the board of directors for approval, the capital expenditure of the additional 34.4 million over the 2.3 that's already approved, that the project be constructed by Easter Construction as construction manager, that the Keating Channel pedestrian bridge be added to the scope of the project, and that these are conditional upon execution of the delivery agreement with the City of Toronto, and that we will report back to farm with a comprehensive update on the Quayside infrastructure project that we just spent a few minutes talking about within the next 6 to 9 months.
And this is okay from a procurement perspective? I don't know what the dollar value is of adding this, manage the bridge for us.
About 9 million, 10
And from a
million.
procurement, we
So-
can just tack it on?
Yeah.
When do we expect the delivery agreement to be executed? What's their?
We are a good draft already with the city. So our Ian is working closely with the city lawyers. What do we think? You know, couple months time before we have to report in September. Later.
Yeah, it's part of a larger, the whole Quayside project, so it'll take some time to work through, but they've had a draft for a while. We're working through various groups and departments.
And last question for me, the 34.4 is that of the, what's the total public realm project? Is it 350, 250 from us and 100 more from the city?
No, the 250 was the original estimate, and that was based on both our contribution and their contribution.
Oh, okay. And that's, we know it's going higher. We just.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just don't expect that much.
Okay. Good discussion. Thanks for the work on this important project. Can I get a motion to, as outlined there on the screen? Jeannie, all in favor? Lori? Okay. Thank you. Keep moving. We're doing okay on time. Next is Portland's and then the independent capital monitor report.
So
Update there?
yeah, I'll provide an update on the project. So you could, this is our, what we call our propeller view. So that's the view as of the end of April for the overall project. And you can see at the left-hand side that the islands are now 5 islands in Canoe Cove are fully islands. And over the last month, they've actually been completed with the planting. You can see the river valley essentially completed from Keating down to the Folsa Slip. And we'll see some photos of the progress on the West Plug excavation. Next slide, I think the next slide's a video, Charmaine. Got that teed up?
So when you post it on the LinkedIn or whatever, yeah, it's great.
LinkedIn.
I think it's on the LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't do any other social media, so. Narration on it?
There is a narration, but it's not coming through here. So you can see the Canoe Cove Islands. As we go by, we still have to pull out the original dock wall sheet piling. You can see just to the right. We've got rock revetment in at Promontory Park. That's the beginning of the promontory itself. So that's a mechanical stabilized grade that's being installed. We've got the Water's Edge Promenade, which will begin later this year. We've got some additional dock wall work to do here. So this is one of the optimizations we've done. The additional dock wall we're doing here will save us about $4 million in lightweight fill for Promontory Park. No,
Is that right there where the pedestrian bridge will come across?
that's exactly where the pedestrian bridge will come across. So we've got a pathway that we're going to design to allow us to access it, because Promontory Park North won't be complete when the park is, or when the bridge is. We are forecasting to open Cherry Street, including the bridges, and Commissioner Street now in the middle of October. So that's the schedule, working with the city on. We've actually paved Cherry Street, so it's fully paved now from Lakeshore Boulevard to Commissioner Street. Still a lot of work to be done: sidewalks, curbs, tree pits, light poles, etc. We've been doing some dredging that's required for us to continue to meet our schedule in front of the stormwater outfall and at the mouth of the Don that you can see on the right side where the north plug will be excavated. Still working the sedimentary management area with dock walls and dredging of the river, and dredging of the lakeshore. 2 additional bays has commenced, will be complete in the next couple of weeks. And then we've got a schedule in place for delivery of the bridge piers, or not piers, but beams, and then the concrete will happen directly after. You can see the ice management area here leading under the Commissioner Street Bridge. Don Greenway is nearing completion, actually. Following the path of the river, that extra berm you see is to allow us to keep those crib walls, the crib walls wet. That's part of the inundation project. Also the wetlands. So over the course of the next couple of months, we'll actually be getting water into the wetlands and shooting for the end of the year to get water into the river itself from the inner harbor and remove the west plug. You can see the pedestrian bridges place, wetlands, the Fire Hall 30. So work's happening around the Fire Hall 30, and we'll commence that work in Fire Hall shortly. And I think that's it.
When are you pulling out the plug?
Well, the first.
Yeah, the west plug comes out in around the end of the year, either the end of the year, beginning of January. And then the north plug comes out in November of 2024.
We are trying to manage the expectation on that plug pullout.
It's
not going to be like a torrent. Yeah.
Government there.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have a tri-government event for sure for the
Instead of ribbon
commissioners.
cutting, you can do a.
But
plug cutting.
we are telling people it's not gonna be this torrent of like, we pull the plug and it just floods and takes out
We're not
everything.
doing
So
the
it's
Mediterranean.
actually in our newsletter this month. We're gonna talk about how we're gradually letting the water.
So what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna pump water into the river valley until it gets up to the same elevation as the inner harbor. And once that happens, we'll go in and we'll just remove the existing plug.
Okay, pull a PR around it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll figure something cool.
Cool. Nice.
It won't be exploding.
Yeah.
Not gonna have you pull the plug as running down the river with the water behind you.
We also don't want to walk our trees. Go in.
Okay.
Anyhow, it's great.
Thanks, Charmaine. We're carrying on. So here you can see excavation of the west plug. We're now, I'd say 95% complete that excavation, and we'll be starting the risk management measures in the next couple of weeks and all of the finishes to build it back up so that we can actually pull the plug at the end of the year. Next.
What bridge is that right there again?
That bridge is the Cherry Street South Bridge. So that's the yellow one. So that's the one that's open. Okay. And here's the view we saw previously of the ice management area under the Commissioner Street bridges, or bridge, just a longer bridge. Next. And that's the view underneath that bridge. The work that's happening with the scaffolding is electrical. We have to put conduits in and run all the electrical feeds across that bridge to get the electricity to the island. Next. The wetlands next to the ice management area. So this is where we did the ceremony with the Mississaugas, the First Nation, where we replanted the 100-year-old seeds. Yeah. Next. Carp Gate is in, I didn't realize carp were quite as strong as they appear to be. They ain't getting through that. No amount of chipping and explosives will do that for them. Next. View of the Don Greenway. So as I said, it's actually nearing completion. A lot of the work is actually completed in the central part of the river valley and in the Greenway. So there'll be a full year of growth and naturalization that happens before we even finish next year. Next. Just showing what we're working on, and we've been very fortunate, great weather. We've made a whole lot of progress in the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue to do so. Next. Just of note, with respect to the overall, you can see 91%, this was as of March, 91% awarded, 7% not started. Now you mentioned that we've actually, we're at 93% for the larger project, because we'll be in a position to award the parks work immediately on getting those agreements signed. So that's, we've been holding off those awards pending getting the agreements for the new funding signed. And once that's done, we'll actually do that, be able to increase the amount of awards quite substantially.
Is our 10 million part of the contribution agreement now?
Part of
it's noted as part of the contribution.
Not part of the infrastructure fund, the federal infrastructure fund. Yeah. As a commitment fund.
This will be on top of, and that's what got us to 93.7.
We took that money out of the parliament slip.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Won't go through that. So next period, so to the end of June. Let's carry on. So complaints over the course over the winter, mostly again traffic related to those people from the east facing that nightmare. We still do get some complaints. A lot of them are actually related to cycling. Tough to keep the cycle paths open and clean, very clean during the winter months. So we've now been working with the local council over the past couple of weeks to make sure that it's as good as it can be over the course of the next few months before we reopen Cherry and Commissioner Street. Next. Indigenous communities, we continue to work with the MCFN regarding the Indigenous cultural reflection in the park. So we're going through the process of identifying and retaining a number of artists, artisans, and architects to provide those Indigenous cultural heritage elements. And we've obviously still been working with them on other opportunities and openings as part of the work that we're doing with the Mississaugas. Next. That was interesting. You can see, went to a communication slide there. It got all.
That's
weird.
why it was all drama.
So we've got planting is resuming. And over the summer, we did have that event yesterday. We'll probably do a few more of those public events, although they won't be associated with anything in particular. We'll just open up. There was so much interest yesterday. We think we can open it up to more of the public and maybe do one or two over the course of the summer.
And as you pointed out on the slide, we did a number of ULI tours as well. So there's been a lot of engagement along the waterfront there.
And in the fall, I mentioned we're going to reopen Cherry Street and Commissioner Street. So working with the city to get those approvals in place through council in there before the end of June or before the end of July, rather, when they break for the summer. Next. That's all for that. And I think I'm still on.
So I just wanted to say one thing, and I'll mention this at the board meeting as well. I know we've focused so much on the pressure that we've had to accommodate with the governments, and I want to thank the governments for their support on this. But when you look at the big picture, I think the board should be very proud and management as what we've accomplished over that period of time. When you look at other projects that you've read about in the media recently and others, we're only months behind and 13-14%. Over which I think the board should be extremely pleased with. So I just want to thank my staff. They've done a great job on this.
Good job, David.
Yes.
Team.
The team. Okay,
What's next? The
the semi-annual update. So I'll give you a quick view of where we're at after. So the 169 million was really based on the work that we did in September to identify the estimate of completion and the risks. We have updated our risk quantification as at the end of March, and I'll just give you a very, very quick update as to where we are. It's very positive, positive news. So can we move to, don't need that. Slide 175, please. So just status update. We mentioned, I guess we don't actually need 175. We just went through a fairly detailed status update. For the next several, let me move on. Okay, why don't we, Charmaine, let's move to 179. So what we see here is a reflection of the EA estimate of completion forecast and what we're actually tracking to. So the forecast remains, or it has been established, I suppose, at $1.35 billion. So that is the additional funding we're expecting. So we've replaced really our testing of the 1,185 number with 1,354. The actual or the forecast number based on our current estimate is still 1.35, includes contingency of 41.7 million. Currently, as of today, we still have contingency of 51 million, but Ellis Dawn is forecasting we'll be using about 10 million of that currently. The hard costs increased about 15 million from our last report in September, and soft costs increased about 6.5 million. Much of that was actually included in our contingency and in our risk quantification in September, because you'll see as we move to the next slides that the risk amount is actually, or the contingency amount is actually reduced based on the results. So this is just a detail of, thank you, a detail of where those increases have appeared, mostly in the roads and bridges. The variances have shown up next. So that's the 15 million in hard costs. This is the contingency construction estimate variance rather. So this shows where the variances are, what the specific details are with respect to the changes in cost from September to March. And I won't go through a whole lot of detail, but if you have any questions, let me know. Next item, soft cost variance, again, shows by sector where those costs have gone up. We've seen an increase of about 3.6 million in roads and services and about 2.3 million in earthworks, parks. Very little additional in bridges because they're mostly done. Next slide is the contingency drawdown from September. So this shows the 51 million remaining at this time, or as at the end of March. And on the next slide, changes to the risk register, you can see that the quantification of risks actually dropped by about 12.2 million, between 12.2 and 12.4 from September. So that's both a reflection of risks that have been realized and are now part of the EAC, now part of the estimate, as well as risks that have been retired that we know we won't be incurring. Next slide deals with the details with respect to those risks. Again, I won't go through the details, but they're there if you want to ask questions. And then the last slide shows the analysis of the costs where we are. So based on this, we are currently forecasting 1.35 billion, and that is about, or not, that's calculated as 93.7% probability of achievement. The probability in September of that same number was 96.4%. So it's dropped by about 2.5%, which over the course of 6 months is not too bad. So we think that's these are very positive results, and we're obviously continuing to track these on a monthly basis, and we'll continue to report them on a semi-annual basis with our next report based on the estimate at the end of September. So the last slide here just gives you the details again of the what we're forecasting. Total base cost, the percentages of 93.7 and the forecast of $1.35 billion. Next slides deal with risks. I think I'll very quickly go through. You can see our top risk remains external market forces, so escalation. We still have soil disposal risks that we are identifying, as well as soil disposal rate risks. And then there are also some opportunities. We think the city have approved reimbursement of our dredging costs. So we think we'll be able to reduce the EAC by about $4 million based on recovering those costs from the city next year. Schedule risks, fairly positive. Enbridge, and these are all discrete risks, don't affect the end of the project, may affect the specific element that they're referring to, but don't necessarily add to the overall completion date. So Enbridge noted here potential for a 3-month delay. We're working with Enbridge now to, they're going to start their work in the next month or so, and they're working towards
cooperating.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Good. Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a very good relationship with them. And I think that's all. So if there are any questions or.
Is this a living model that you have now that you're plugging in data daily, or is it a whole manual processes on this?
It's somewhat manual. We don't do the risk quantification on a daily basis. What we do is we do every month update the estimate. So we're looking at changes to the estimate every month. And then every 6 months, we will have HDR, who's our risk consultant. We also update our risk register on a monthly basis. But then every 6 months, we do a fulsome, another fulsome estimate, another risk register run, and then they do the quantification, the Monte Carlo, and do the calculations. So that part of it happens every 6 months by basically it's part of the process.
This is all shared with BTY,
100%, absolutely.
the updates.
As David said, we meet with Elliston and the subcontractors to make sure we're up to date.
So should we move to BTY then now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Not sure who's on the line today. My apologies.
Yeah, yes.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. First, really happy to hear what David just mentioned about the funds. It's great that you guys are securing that money. It's wonderful. So just to let you know, we focus into main areas during this quarter. One was, as always, the budget and to the schedule. So the schedule was the most important to us right now and the more critical, because we had made several recommendations in the past about how the schedule was handled and the information available. So we had a great opportunity to work in collaboration with David's team and Ellis Dunn in regards of, let's say, the preparation of the new baseline in February with the subsequent update in March. So we're a little bit more confident now about how the schedule is going. We still have a couple of concerns, but it's manageable, and I think they're doing a really good job in terms of mitigating impacts and things. It all depends on many facts, including weather conditions, but I think everything seems to be reasonable. Substantial completion for December 2024. It's a little bit aggressive, but it's still okay in terms of anticipation. And the final completion by July 2025. So I think it's still on track, and we still are monitoring and following, and we feel a little bit more confident now than before. In terms of the estimated completion, David and his team provided all the information that he talked to you today, so we're actually monitoring and following that, particularly on the risk assessment. It seems like it's still really robust, really well elaborated, and we feel confident that it's achievable. The only concern that we had was securing these funds, but you guys mentioned about this today, and it's really positive, and makes our position a little bit more comfortable to say, yeah, these guys are doing a good job, and that's what we feel right now. In terms of progress, we have been to the site and we have noticed. Keep on telling David and Don anytime I go to the site that is one of the most exciting projects I have worked in my life, just to see how beautiful the project is and you know, seeing the progress that you guys are doing. So we compare that to the schedule and it seems, yeah, these guys are working fine. That's pretty much our position right now. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I'll be really happy to answer.
Thanks, Luis, for the update. I just noted in your report, you had some concerns in your written report around the critical path, but what you just told us verbally, you feel that you're managing them well, David and the team?
Yeah, we just point those out in terms of there are still some sequences that need to be adjusted a little bit, but overall, we're not that much concerned. To be fully honest, that's why we actually gave our assessment to the schedule as green, because we see, yeah, there are things to be monitoring, and that's what we're doing, monitoring. If by any chance we see that these activities are not sequenced or scheduled in a proper way, we will report to this board in our report and make those comments in the next quarter.
So Jeannie, if you recall, we always do some sequencing adjustments, but it doesn't affect the long-term opening.
Okay, thanks for that report, Luis. I
Great.
think,
Are we gonna do an in-camera BTY at the end, just so?
if you'd like one, I don't see any reason, but if you want to, let's do one. We might call you back for an in-camera, Luis.
There's a governance thing.
So Luis, you heard that they're gonna call you back when they go in camera?
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to the insurance, I think. Correct. Before.
Yep.
That you, Lisa?
It is me. I can provide a brief update. So for the benefit of the committee, there is a report in your package that provides an update regarding our corporate insurance renewals for the year 23-24. And these are our corporate policies that include things like directors and officers insurance, cyber crime, commercial general liability, and property. And I'm pleased to report that we were able to successfully maintain all our existing coverages with a modest 3% increase to premiums overall. We spend about $270,000 a year on these premiums, of which our CGL makes up 50% and our D&O comes in a second after that. The committee may also recall last year we did engage an independent third party, Intech Risk Management, to assess and confirm the adequacy of our coverages, and they confirmed they were sufficient. They made a few minor recommendations, one of which was to take a look at deductibles, see if we could reduce those in order to maintain the premiums. We did do that, and it didn't turn out to any great savings, so we left the deductibles largely where they were. And that I can talk about cyber and crime in the closed session. So happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
No questions there. Thanks for protecting us again. Okay, I think we're now going to take a motion to go into closed session from Jeannie and seconded by Lori. And okay,